Hello and welcome to an Automobilista 2 video where today we're going to be driving the Formula Ultimate 2019 car around Interlagos, and the Formula Ultimate is effectively Reiza's version, surprise surprise, of a 2019 F1 car. So we're going to be talking about the handling characteristics and a little bit about the track and kind of comparing the handling of this car in comparison to some of the other high-end open wheelers in other racing sims. Although my only real comparison is going to be against Project Cars 1 and 2 with the Formula Renault 3.5 and the Formula A. I haven't actually touched the F1 cars in iRacing, nor have I touched the F1 cars in R Factor 2 either. Obviously, I played the F1 Codemasters games, but they're not quite as highly detailed as some of the other sims that are on the market in terms of the physics of those cars. Obviously it does try and simulate some things, but not quite as in much detail or with quite the accuracy of some of the other titles. So obviously they're trying to appeal a little bit more towards a mass market and a younger player base as well. So let's talk about the track first and foremost, as we're kind of cruising around for the first couple of laps or so. And I've had a bit of a love-hate-love relationship with Interlagos. I used to love it back in the old days of Grand Prix 2, F1 97, 98 and 99 back on the PlayStation 1. And then when it kind of came to the PlayStation 2 games with the F1 titles that were in the 2000s, I started to dislike the track and not really enjoy driving around it. For some odd reason, I couldn't really pinpoint it. I think I just kind of struggled getting used to the flow. But recently, since the track came out on the iRacing service, and then also here because I have already turned some laps to kind of get used to the circuit and get used to the car, been enjoying it a fair bit more. The track is very nicely detailed. It does seem like there are some details that are potentially missing. It's like a lock up there on the brakes, as the tyres and brakes are quite cold at the moment. We need to build up the temperature in those as we slowly build up the pace. But yeah, the track detail is pretty good. It seems like there could be some more details in a number of places, like this grandstand's missing on the right hand side of the circuit just there, going down that start finish straight, or at least in comparison to what they have in the F1 venues. Obviously this could potentially be based off of the stock cars, the Brazilian stock cars that race here, so that could be their reference that they've used for building the circuit. But who knows, we may see some things change, some more event detail come in closer to the game's release, which I hope that they will do, because I think it just gives a greater sense of presence to the circuit when it's nicely fleshed out and there's a lot of atmosphere around the circuit. So hopefully they'll bring that in. I'm not entirely sure if the circuit is laser scanned or not, but it certainly feels good to drive. It's got a very nice flow to it, and yeah, it's a lot more enjoyable. And as I mentioned, been enjoying the track a lot more. So let's talk about the car then. What I like about it, what I don't like about it. And one of the cool things that I do like about this is the difference in braking from the earlier laps when first coming out of the pits, when the tyres are kind of cold, brakes are quite cold, in comparison to what they're like later on down the line. Once you've done some laps, you've got some heat cycles in through the tyres and through the brake discs as well, and they kind of brought everything up to temperature and up to pressure as well. Difference is quite big. When you first come out the pits, you're kind of having to tiptoe on the brakes an awful lot, kind of using about 50-60%, maybe not even that, just to get the car slowed down to avoid locking up. But as you get that heat built up into the tyres and the brakes, and things come up to optimal temperatures and pressures, you can get on the brake pedal much harder and start to use it at 100%. Obviously you're still needing to bleed off the brake application as you come in towards the apex. It's obviously as you're slowing the car down, downforce levels are decreasing, therefore there's going to be less grip and the tyres are more likely to lock up. So you do kind of have to feather the brakes and bleed them off as you come in towards the corner. as there is no ABS. But that difference is really, really nice. When I first came out, I thought that the car felt a little bit odd and a little bit funny in that regard, and I thought that braking was kind of all very much wrong, but as I turned more laps, I was able to get a lot more confident on the brakes and actually start using heavier application and kind of attack the braking a fair bit more. So that's really nicely well done here. And one other thing that I do quite like is the general handling of the car, especially kind of in these situations where you're just being nice and smooth and just kind of guiding the car around the circuit. It feels much better than the Formula A that we had in Project Cars 1 and Project Cars 2, which always felt a little bit odd to me. It felt alright and quite good at high speed stuff, but when kind of turning into slow speed corners and accelerating out of slow speed corners, it felt extremely tight at the rear, and it felt like the car was really narrow and had really big wide tyres, which is kind of accurate in a way. The car is based off the 2011 and 2012 F1 cars, which were quite narrow and quite tall, but the tyres weren't massively fat at the rear, especially compared to modern F1 cars of the last year or so, where they've had those wider tyres. But yeah, it was that kind of all came from the differential, where it just felt really tight and really quite awkward when going into slow corners. It just was a little bit unpredictable. It would break away from you when you wouldn't necessarily expect it to. And yeah, it wasn't quite as enjoyable, but here things feel a lot better. The car, you can guide it in quite a bit more nicely and not really have to worry about the rear breaking away from you. The main areas that you do need to worry is if you are turning a little bit too much in some high downforce corners, just kind of over rotating, minding too much from the front. It entirely depends on the aero balance and the setup of the car. We can't actually change the setups as of yet, so I'm not entirely sure what like the wing angles and the amount of downforce that is being produced at the front and rear, but there have been times, especially on colder tyres, when coming through this long right hander up here, just putting in a little bit too much steering angle lock through this apex here, and the rear end is just kind of wanting to over rotate on me a little bit. And then also when getting hard on the exit, hard on the throttle out through the exit, such as here, you can see that the car will bite and kick you around quite easily. So that's quite good, in the sense that you have to be really quite cautious with the throttle application. Obviously these V6 hybrids do have an awful lot of power, and you will absolutely rock it out of corners. So you need to be very much on top of the car and making sure that you're progressive on the throttle and not just absolutely mashing it to avoid wheel spinning coming out the exit. But once it does start wheel spinning, I think that's one of the areas that needs a little bit more work. Now, obviously I haven't actually driven the car in real life, but from what I've seen from onboards wise, especially the teams at the lower end of the F1 grid, i.e. not the top three teams of Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull, kind of the more midfield and lower end teams that have a little bit less effective aero at the rear end of the car, they tend to suffer a little bit more in terms of grip when getting hard on the accelerator coming out of some of the corners. And when the car does bite and let go, it does let go. But there are some instances here in the sim where you get hard on the throttle, the car kind of steps out, and then without you really doing too much, like there, the car just kind of straightens itself out again. It kind of auto-corrects itself. Now, I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is, but it seems a little bit odd, and I would have thought there would need to be a little bit more input from the driver to actually try and catch and save the slide. Possibly reducing the throttle a little bit more, having to counter steer a little bit more. I mean, I kind of did in that previous instance, and I was kind of up against the curb, so that may have potentially have helped and saved me slightly there, but at the same time you'd also expect the curb to kind of bite you and make the situation a little bit worse. But yeah, that's my main complaint of the car so far. It's just how it kind of re-grips up in certain situations once traction has been broken. So like there, I probably should have ended up going round, but I put some counter steering level in and then obviously lifted out the throttle, and it did near enough come off it for a split second, but I would have thought that I would have had to have worked a little bit harder. It's not in every situation. There are some situations where the car is just gone and you can't catch it or save it, but there are other times where there's like, it feels like you're having to put barely any kind of change in input to catch the slide. That's the only place that I kind of think that would need some work. Otherwise, this car is a lot of fun. It's really good to drive, really nice and flowing. The rear doesn't feel as horrible and as tight as the Formula A did in Project Cars 2. Speeds seem pretty believable, and it's quite enjoyable to drive. Obviously you need to be very much on top of things because everything is coming at you at 200 miles an hour. There. So that was like a perfect example. I'd only put a little bit of counter steering in, and I probably changed my throttle application by 20-30%, and the car just re-gripped. Would have expected to have come off the throttle a lot more than that to have actually got the car back in a straight line. But either way, overall a really solid handling car. I'm really enjoying it. Just hope that Reiza potentially makes that little bit of a small change there, and hopefully we see a little bit more event detail come in into the circuit, as that would really set things off. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the F1 Ultimate 2019 car. I think a lot of people would be fairly happy and enjoy driving this car, especially around circuits like this, where it really rewards you for pushing the car to its limits and really making use of the downforce. And then you got some of the slower speed sections as well. It's just got a really nice flow to it. Same thing again. But yeah. Anyway, I'm just going to go quiet now. Focus on getting a pretty good lap, but just enjoy. See what kind of lap time we can get out of this. Big slide. Okay, yeah, big slide there. That kind of ruined everything, but hey ho. Still, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Feel free to take a look at all the past videos that I've done, various live streams. Be very much appreciated. If you do decide to support the channel, and hopefully you find something that you find entertaining or educational here when you do subscribe. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully I shall catch you in the next one. Until then, have fun, stay safe, and take care.